The latest. Thank you for your love and support. I appreciate you all. I appreciate the love you are showing me. I am getting better. Special shout out to all my super thanks gifters. I appreciate you all for supporting this channel. We are told that Africans will have nothing. Other people need to help us in order for us to be able to survive. So today we sit here for other people to bring in food because we claim we have nothing. When the President of the United States of America, Donald Trump, decided to cut the aid, the USAID, to Africans, we saw how our leaders were crying. And even to date, our leaders are still sitting down looking for means and ways to get aid coming into Africa because they believe that we can never survive without these aids. But when we tell our brothers and sisters that actually it is Africa that is giving aid to these people, we don't believe it. Now their own people are confessing that the West and America are all receiving aid from Africa. That where do they get all the gold, this lifestyle they have and other things, if not Africa? So the peanut that they give to us, broad daylight, is just to show the world that they have, just to cover up their real identity. But the truth is, Africa is the one that is always giving aid to these people. We have the natural resources, and that is the reason to which they do not want Africa to have a leader that they cannot control, because the day we get leaders that will take charge of everything that has to do with Africa, our resources, these people, their economy and everything will collapse. So they are fighting us, making sure that they change the narrative to their people.
Africa is the only continent that does not have to import anything. They don't need your oil. They don't need your gas. They don't need your gold. They don't need your food. They don't need your rice. They don't need your cattle. They don't need your corn. They don't need nothing. It is the only continent that does not have to import anything.
Africa gives aid to Europe. Most people don't know that. I'll prove this to you. If you look at European resources, what do we have? Do we have copper, oil, uranium, gold, right? All these things. Fruits. Do we have these things? Just down there we have supermarkets. Where's the fruit from? Okay. Now, if right now Africa stops giving aid to Europe, says, you're not taking our bananas, our fruits, our oil, our gas, you're not taking any of this. Fine. Europe, your chicken is worth our chicken. Your beef is worth our beef. Okay? One for one like. No currencies involved. What will Europe trade on? What does the UK have? Apples, potatoes. What do they have? Africa has the resources, and that aid is coming to the UK. That aid is coming to Europe. So the thing is,
yeah, it's interesting. You would classify that as aid.
It is aid. What else is it?
I won't disagree with you in regards to all those things. I already know that, and I agree with you there. But I like the way you've used it as you put it under the banner of aid. Africa.
I didn't. This is what black academics who are working on this.
Africa is the only reason why Western Europeans get to enjoy such a high quality of life, especially for France. They brag about being able to live well even though they don't have to work as hard as Americans, but they omit the fact that all that comfort they enjoy comes off of the back of African resources and labor. England, Portugal, Germany, Belgium, Italy, and France all made a massive scramble for Africa in the 1880s, and France by far still has their foot in their old colonial ways. And even though these African nations have declared their independence, France and a couple other countries are still exploiting them, and they have given nothing in return to these African nations. They have built very little in infrastructure and construction. They have given next to nothing compared to how much they have taken to support their ways. Out of the 8 African coups that have happened since 2020, 7 of them were from French colonies. The French do not know how to build, they do not know how to innovate, they do not know how to grow democracy in any part of the world, which is why for the past 60, 70 years, they have just had French puppets that were ruling these African countries that finally got sick of how they were being treated. China has only taken an interest in Africa for 30 or 40 years, yet they have built more industry and infrastructure than all of the other European countries combined. So of course, the African nations are going to have a much more favorable disposition towards China, since they are the ones who are actually building factories, roads, bridges, hospitals. China is actually divesting a lot of their own resources to make this possible. You guys know how I feel about a lot of Chinese policy, but they did hit the nail on the mark when it comes to Africa. It is pretty clear that Russia's Wagner forces have had a lot to do with the coups that have taken place in Gabon, Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. And even though the Russians aren't trying to actually help anyone, I believe they are trying to foment chaos and destabilize a lot of positions in the West. This can be an overall good thing for Central Africa. Even though the Russians' goal is to create a lot of instability for the West, this instability can spread to a lot of other African countries, and that can actually hurt a lot of China's positions there. Make no mistake, despite what you're seeing in the media, the US will find a way to exploit whatever is happening in Africa. At first, they seemed that they were very pro taking down the Niger coup, and now they've kind of backed off, and they said that they are going to respect the current government. No, a lot of these African nations don't have a favorable viewing of the United States. The US will always find a way to profit off of whatever instability is caused. If there is going to be a disruption in the energy supply, I will bet you that the US will make money selling its liquid natural gas and oil. If there is going to be widespread war, the US is going to make a lot of money selling its weapons. I would not put it past the United States interests to have their cake and eat it too. They may be happy about China building all of this infrastructure because that means the US doesn't have to. It means the US doesn't have to invest in anything to make Africa more prosperous and rich, but they can reap all of the benefits for when that actually happens. In my opinion, I think that every Western interest should be kicked out of every African country and then reintroduced as a potential trading partner among peers with equal standing, instead of these African nations having to deal with the West like guaranteed exploiters.
If you've been on TikTok for a while, you must have heard about a ton of Africans telling you that Europeans stole Africa's resources. Now, there's a lot to say about that. First and foremost, most of these resources are still in Africa, and they're not being stolen by Europeans. They're actually being sold to Europeans by the African state leadership. Your own elites are robbing you. It's not us doing it. Not anymore. The real issue, of course, is why aren't Africans using their own resources to do things? Why does Mr. Beast have to go to Kenya to build water wells? Why didn't the Kenyan government do it themselves? I suppose the Kenyan government could have done it themselves. They just chose not to do it. Nigeria is now a country of almost 220 million people, the largest country in Africa. But they only produce about 10% of the electricity that a small country like Hungary. Hungary only has 10 million people, but they produce 10 times as much electricity as Nigeria does. I mean, I know you want to have your Wakanda, right? But do you expect white people to give it to you? No, you're supposed to build it yourself. Having said all this, it is of course obvious that we Europeans in the North need to prepare for a possible, potential African rise in terms of technology and therefore also in terms of military capacity. And that means we in Europe need to already start looking ahead and thinking ahead about how we are going to win the war against Africa, because there will be a future war between Europe and Africa.
That is why even when Africans will leave the continent and travel to any other part of the world, they see us to be inferior. They see us coming there to be beggars because Africa has nothing. And they make sure that they project this narrative by getting places in Africa like Sudan, Congo, where there's conflict, that the people are suffering due to what is happening, the insecurity. Then they project it to their people, claiming that Africa will have nothing. Then they will be donating to these people. And they are making money out of this so-called suffering that the African is going through. So in real life, Africa is the one that is feeding them. If not, why are they not allowing Africans to have leaders that will take charge of the resources, take charge of the continent? They claim our leaders are corrupt, but finally when we get leaders that are not corrupt and they are fighting to make sure that we have a better Africa, they are the same people that will rise up against these leaders. If truly Africa is poor, Why are they always in Africa? Why are they not allowing us to be on our own? Why are they not allowing the leaders that we have that are changing the continent to continue to rule? Africa is never poor. Nobody is giving aid to Africa. We are the ones that are taking care of these people, and that is why always they are fighting Africa. The conflicts that we are seeing, the so-called conflicts in Sudan and in Congo, are not conflicts. These are the people that are causing the destabilization so they can continue to be taking the resources. Look at what they are doing in Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. Now we know clearly the people that are behind all these things, just because they do not want to let us be so that we can take control over the resources. Let us understand as Africans that we are not inferior. They do this so that you and I, our morale will come down just to make you powerless. And this is the reason to which Africans till date, we are dying on the Mediterranean Sea to get there, because of the way they package themselves to us. Thanks to social media, their own people are exposing them to the world. So even if you are an African that is still having some doubts about what is happening, you should understand that we are not the ones that are begging these people. There is everything in Africa. They are the reason to which Africa is not progressing, because of the systematic things that they've kept in place to make sure that everything that we get comes to them. And that is why they are fighting the African in the guise of helping us. They are never interested in the lives of Africans. So those of us who believe that these people love us so much, and whenever they claim they are bringing NGOs to come and help us, you should understand, because several times Captain Ibrahim Traore exposed these NGOs organizations, their main aim in Africa. This is not to come into the continent to come and help you. Nobody wants you, the African. All they are interested in Africa is the resources, and not you, the people. They love our resources and not us. They can never love us, because what they claim is happening in Africa is happening to black Africans wherever they are. Yet they are not fighting against such things. You need to know the power that you have as an African, and we have to start emancipating ourselves. These things are taught even in the school. So today the African grows without knowing the richness in our continent, because we are sold the story that the continent is poor. Let us come together to fight for the continent, because there is none that is like ours. As we are busy running away, they are busy coming here. Why are they here? Why do they always take interest in the things that have to do with Africa and not you? And that is why the leaders that are doing nothing are the ones that they are dining with, and are rising against the leaders that are fighting to give us the better Africa we are looking for. Africa is not poor, and that is what we should understand as Africans, that everything that we need is in our continent. We are feeding the so-called world superpowers, and that is why they are all fighting, claiming they love Africa. The only true friend of the African is Russia, because they are the ones that are protecting our all in all, making sure that we get our freedom. Hadn't been Russia, by now this struggle would have been a thing of the past. We are the only ones that can set ourselves free. United we stand, divided we fall, and united we keep standing forever and ever. The greatest enemy of the African is mental slavery. So let's decolonize ourselves from mental slavery. Let's keep sharing to educate our brothers and sisters. Together we make Africa great for ourselves and the next generations that are going to come. So that's the latest around the world and in Europe.